So, the Salvation Army has come to the shocking conclusion that they are themselves racist. Along with a number of other organisations, as we'll find out. So, in a document, we've got this article from the Post-Millennial. In a document obtained by Central Nova News titled, "Let's Talk About Racism," they state that Christianity is inherently racist and that white people need to lament, repent, and apologise for biases or racist ideologies held and actions committed. So,
what is inherently racist about a religion that revolves around a Middle Eastern man of colour, a Jewish Middle Eastern man of colour?
Well, don't you know that when he came over to the West, we coloured him in white?
Ah, yes, he did the old Michael Jackson trick.
Yeah, because it's not like every religion ever has some kind of cultural, like, morphs as it goes around different cultures. And
of course, men make
people.
gods in their own image, as Aristotle observed.
Yeah.
But like,
and also there's we'll get into,
but inherently racist. Christianity is an individualistic religion.
Christianity birthed liberalism.
Sure, but it's based on sort of like Greek egocentricity. So it's based within the individual. So it doesn't talk about groups of people. It talks about what you as a person should be doing. Love thy neighbor, act in a virtuous way. And this is how you personally gain entrance to the kingdom of heaven. But where is the racism there?
Well, we'll find out. I mean, first of all, as well, I just want to point out that we'll find out in a little bit, but one of the biggest members of the Christian religion in a country like America, which is where all this is coming from, as you'd imagine, are black people. There's a lot of black Christians. Well, yeah.
There's all of South America and Central America, the lower half of Africa. Like, these are literally billions of people. Like, there's literally a billion or so people.
Rio de Janeiro, how white are all of they with their gigantic Jesus statue looking over all of them? In an accompanying worksheet titled Study Guide on Racism, because they're getting you to study it as well, they argue that the subtle nature of racism is such that people who are not consciously racist easily function with the privileges, empowerments, and benefits of the dominant ethnicity, thus unintentionally perpetuating injustice. So this is the pure anti-racist, critical race theory view of racism, where it's like, you don't need a single actual racist person for the system, for society to be racist, man.
Yeah, if white people died out tomorrow, then all of the remaining non-white people living in the countries would be still perpetuating racism.
If you're showing up on time to work, then you are perpetuating whiteness, as Coca-Cola were kind enough to inform us.
Yes.
And remember that this comes also, just as a quick reminder, we won't dwell on this too much. If you go over to the next one, John, that this comes after the Oxfam staff got a survey telling them how to combat their own whiteness. I think you covered this earlier this year.
Probably.
Yeah, and people weren't too pleased about that, because why do the charities need to do this sort of thing? And you're doing charitable work, for God's sake. Like, what could be more virtuous than putting out your time and money for free?
Yeah, but that's probably racism in and of itself, isn't it? It's probably that white people do more charity than black people or something. Suddenly that's racism.
Yeah, well, there's a disparity. You've got to fill that gap with racism. And if we go along, I can just illustrate the point that I was making here. If you scroll down, you can see there was this survey done on how racially diverse are US religious groups, and this was done back in 2015. And if you scroll down just a little bit more so we can see the full graph, there are certain branches of Christianity here: the Church of God in Christ, African Methodist, Episcopal Church, and the National Baptist Convention, that are almost exclusively black in their membership. So, I mean, not particularly diverse. Are they guilty of presenting
Hindus, unsurprisingly, almost exclusively Indian in their membership?
Who would have thought? Who would have seen that coming?
Yeah, but there's nothing about Christianity, or basically any religion I can think of, that is in any way racial.
Yeah,
I mean, it's about a set of beliefs. You can't make it racial.
The thing is, as well, speaking about that, I mean, you look at the breakdowns of those particularly almost black exclusive churches, and if you were a white guy or a Hispanic guy or anybody going into those churches, they would probably go, welcome.
Yeah, doubtless.
Come on in, brother.
But I love the idea of, like some white, I don't know, charity worker goes in and goes, "Hello, did you realize that Jesus is oppressing you?" They're going to kick you out so quickly. They were like, "Oh, get thee behind me, Satan."
and
rightfully so.
Yes. So now that we've looked at that, let's take a look a little bit deeper at the actual document itself, because it was available through the Post-Millennial article, and it will be linked down below. So this is the Let's Talk About Racism, and it was created...
For the Salvation Army.
Yes.
God,
it was not... It was created itself as well by the Salvation Army's International Social Justice Commission, which we'll find a little bit more out in a few minutes. So this is a voluntary discussion guide that recommends people to take part in 90 to 120-minute long conversations, working through each module, because it's split up into separate modules, going through
2 hours of talking about how you're racist.
Well, I know you're aware of Sean, Actual Justice Warrior, as well. Yes. He has a consistent thing where it's like, we're going to have a conversation about having a conversation about the systemic structures which we need to combat by having a conversation about the next time we'll have a conversation, and it'll just go around and round in circles, just like that. So yeah, it's
like a cult. Cults have like these processing sessions where basically you sit around and you expunge your sinful thoughts that are against the cult, and that's what this is.
It just looks like voluntary programming to me, because the thing is that this is voluntary, but I can imagine that
voluntary being a very flexible word here, because I mean, like, if you don't, then you're a racist, and you're obviously a white supremacist, and now you're a Nazi.
Yeah, so you'll probably be pushed out of whatever major group there is, and this will not. And I've just got a note here that this probably won't produce racial unity between people somehow.
I mean, it ends in segregation everywhere else, but maybe this time it'll be different.
And Christianity is supposed to bring people together, but no, let's racially segregate everybody and make them hyper focus in on their differences based on race. Not a good idea, as far as I can tell. But let's
just to be clear, right? Like, if you look at the history of Christianity, like it was never like a white religion, right?
Yeah.
There have been the first people who became Christians, I think, were the Armenians. Then you have like the Ethiopians, and then you have the Europeans. And so and it was all based on Middle Eastern, like a Middle Eastern Jewish cult. And so the Europeans, if they were to frame it in racial terms, they'd be like, right, okay, this is a brown religion, right?
I mean,
if they were going to look at it in that way, and then it's adopted by the Roman Empire, and so everything in the Roman Empire becomes like the dominion of Christendom, and then Islam basically starts conquering all of the continental Christian lands, like. You can't frame it as a white religion.
And considering it as well, looking back to, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably will know more about this than I do, but wasn't the whole reason the British decided to, abolish slave trading because of the fact that they were viewing it from a very Christian, individualistic perspective of going like, well, if we're all created equal in God's eyes, this is, we're punishing our brothers and sisters under Christianity.
Yes.
We're stripping them of their dignity, therefore this is wrong. We need to stop this.
And not just in Britain either, in America as well. The anti-slavery movement was deeply religious, informed by Christian principles.
And was Islam as quick to throw aside the chains of slavery?
No.
Let's just say no on that one.
Saudi Arabia abolished slavery, and I think it was 1963.
Oh, so quite late on the uptick.
Yeah, within my father's lifetime.
Good God. But yeah, so what we've got in this document, Let's Talk About Racism, they say things like, Salvation Army's International Position Statement on Racism defines racism as the belief that races have distinctive cultural characteristics determined by hereditary factors, and that this endows some races, blah, blah, blah. It's sort of like pretty typical...
with intrinsic superiority over others. Okay, but so few people believe in intrinsic superiority.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty old-fashioned view of racism to a certain extent.
But hang on, there's another thing here, right? So cultural characteristics determined by hereditary factors. All cultures are described in that way, right? Look at the culture of France. It's not just created anew each generation. It's hereditary. You inherit your culture from your parents. They raise you in, not just your parents, obviously your local community, the culture you're in. The reason you've got the accent you have is hereditary. You didn't just make it up. It wasn't an innovation of your own. So every culture has characteristics that are determined by hereditary factors. But what they're doing is they're using this as a way of kind of laundering. You're saying what you're saying is genetic and racial characteristics, right? Again, like you get someone foreign who moves into a culture, then they inherit, their children will inherit the culture of the culture which they're living in, but it's not a genetic lineage from their parents who may have been, like, say, Hindus, come here, they have English-speaking children and are raised in English-speaking culture, so they're not inheriting the culture of India, which is their genetic bloodline, but they still, from hereditary factors, have inherited the culture of the UK. Like, again, it's very slippery, and they know what they're doing. But sorry, Karen.
Yes, no worries. No, it's very interesting. And it goes on, this resource is designed to foster conversations about racism and race. There's the conversations again.
I can't wait to have another conversation about race.
Yep, so that we can join together to fight the evil of racism. I mean, this is not going to help anybody join together, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And create a more just, and here's the magic word, equitable society, because at the end of the day, this all comes down to equity, which is basically, in my eyes at this point, to whenever I hear it, I just hear it as a dog whistle for communism.
Yes.
To be perfectly honest, because that's what
it is.
Yeah, it's flattening all the hierarchies down, so everybody has the same thing. Everybody's equally as miserable as one another. Racism also refers to the system of social advantage and disadvantage, or privilege and oppression that is based on race. So this is all just pretty classic CRT
so are we talking Norman
points.
Supremacy? Us, the poor Anglo-Saxon peasants, have been oppressed by the Normans. Is this where this is going?
And this once again, like you say, this is a cultural export over here. Are we being oppressed by the Americans at this point?
Good point.
That's what it looks like to me.
I'm feeling oppressed by Americans.
Yes. Please also keep in mind that this was written within the context of the United States of America, and in particular, the African-American experience. Well,
why would we have it?
I never would have guessed.
Well, yeah, obviously, but why would we need this?
Yeah. And it carries on. Our international position statement reads, the Salvation Army acknowledges with regret that the Salvationists have sometimes shared in the sins of racism and conformed to economic, organizational, and social pressures. I was about to do the same thing. So what this is basically is that they are Salvation
Flagellate
Army.
yourselves.
Yes, they are supposed to be Christians, but they have found this whole new religion with whole new doctrines.
Yeah.
Original sin, we've got one better for you.
Yeah.
Racism.
Original racism, yeah.
Yep, and now they are castigating themselves on this doctrine. And it carries on. It lays out some goals. What do we hope to achieve?
Great question.
To understand and acknowledge the definitions of race and races. I mean, you've laid out what you consider the definitions.
I love it, right? Yeah, exactly. We want to understand and acknowledge the definitions of race and racism. Like, this is received wisdom from God.
Yeah,
like, we've got the Holy Scripture, and we're just trying to understand it.
Yes, we've got the Holy Scripture from Kimberly Crenshaw herself, handed down, and how the social construct of race has affected society. Hear first-hand testimonies of racist treatment and come to appreciate the ways that racism has impacted fellow Salvationists. So presumably that'll just mean that your one opportunist black friend will get to stand up and go, "Oh, I had a microaggression against me," and then tears are shed. Everybody gives them a round of applause, and
maybe
then they
sing a hymn.
Yeah, and then they get promoted to head of the company or something. Understand God's design for a diverse and unified humanity. And just
at least we're giving some lip service to Christianity here.
There's
something God. Oh yeah, God. That's right. There is a God.
Oh yeah, we're Christian. I forgot for a second there.
Yeah.
Move from the flawed human idea of race and culture into God's design and purpose for us to live as a unified, diverse, and here we go again, equitable people. God himself, God Marx himself, has deigned us to be equitable people. And once again, this is not Christianity.
It's just a big bearded man in the sky. Which difference it make which bearded man we choose, right?
Yeah, but this is not Christianity. This is not. I mean, this is a new form of religion. I mean, this religion can be traced back very clearly to communism, judging by all of its goals. They go on to talk about, once again, how race is a social construct and how race itself doesn't exist, but the social, political, and economic meanings of race that we all recognize inherently create inequalities within society.
And it does exist.
Yes.
I mean, they're literally saying it doesn't exist, but here are the things that make it exist. It's like, so it does exist.
It's the inherent contradiction of this kind of thinking. It has an entire section on what is whiteness, and you can, in fact, predict everything it says in there with 100% accuracy.
Timekeeping.
Yep.
Speaking English. Following the common law.
And they have a little reading list at the bottom which states, have an honest awakening about race in your life. Books like White Awakening.
Awakening!
You know, we need to awake
I'm a born-again critical race theorist.
We need to awake that racial consciousness you've got hidden inside you. Books like White Awaken, White Fragility can help. Here are your New Testaments here, my friend. The White Fragility, as well as an earnest prayer and completing this resource. And it also shills for books like How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi in the reading resources list. So, that's absolutely ridiculous. This is coming from an explicitly Christian organisation, but they all just seem to hate themselves.
Well, yeah,
as far as I can tell.
They're woke now. They're anti-racist. They're following exactly, Ibram X. Kendi, Robin DiAngelo, etc., etc.
Yeah, and this is a good point to shill one of our previous premium videos that we've got available that you were part of, if I remember.
We've read all of these texts, so if you want to sign up to lotus.com, you can go and check out like our guide to white fragility and what it's all about. We can explain it in detail because, unfortunately, that's what we do. We subject ourselves to having to read and understand their nonsense. But that's why we know that it's a religion and it's based on communism.
Yeah, we've got a copy just over here that I thumbed through the other day, and honestly...
just on the bookshelf.
Yeah, Robin DiAngelo is not subtle about what she's going for. It's all laid out very, very clearly in plain English, unlike with some of the intersectionalists like Kimberly Crenshaw, who couches it in the sort of jargony nonsense language.
My favourite quote from Robin DiAngelo is I am a racist. She thinks she's a racist.
Just putting it out there. Well, you don't have to speak for the rest of us, Robin. Good God.
Yeah, you don't speak for white people, Robin.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, she seems to see racism as monoliths, so maybe she thinks
that's what racial consciousness is.
Yeah. So if you move along again, we've got the other document, which is a lot shorter, the study guide on racism, once again, from the Salvation Army, a Christian organisation, as I think we need reminding of that, reading through this stuff.
Yes.
And it basically just, here's a few highlights from it. It is important to note that the category of race has no scientific basis.
Stop them there. Hang on, stop them there. There are biological distinctions between human beings that are collected in aggregate groups.
Yes, right? I think scientifically they're referred to nowadays as ancestral populations.
Yes.
I mean, do you mind if I just finish this?
Sorry.
Genetic, just because it puts the cherry on top of this ridiculous statement. Genetically and biologically, Anglo-Saxons, Asians, Africans, Latinos, etc., are identical.
Then how do we tell them apart? And how do we know they're different to be racist to them? How could we possibly? I mean, that's such a stupid statement.
I know. You can tell they're a religious organisation because there's nothing scientific about that statement whatsoever.
I don't care about race as a category, but that's just technically wrong. I mean, and philosophically wrong. For something to be identical, that means there has to be no differences. It has to be one in the same as itself, right?
Yeah.
And so why do they have different skin colours then? They're not identical. I mean, they're literally not. And then you can go beneath
flip of the coin, surely.
Exactly. You know, but you can go beneath the skin and look at like bone structure, like ocular sockets and stuff like this. And it's like, look, none of this matters. You know, on a political level, it does matter. They all have the same human rights. But just to say, well, there's no scientific basis for the differences between Anglo-Saxons and Africans, it's like, it's just not true.
Yeah,
it's nonsense.
I mean, they go on to talk about how colour blindness is wrong. I mean, when you talk about when you talk about that sort of stuff,
not being a racist, that's wrong. I tell you,
they always say,
there are no racists.
Oh, if you're colourblind, then you don't see people's, and you say that you don't see people's race, then you just let any injustice happen to them. And the point of what you're saying. Obviously, when I say that I'm colourblind, I can tell that some guy is black and some guy is Asian and some guy is white. The difference is I choose not to treat them differently purely based on their skin colour.
What I'm saying there is I'm politically colourblind, as in their skin colour isn't a political statement in my world and is not politically actionable as a policy, unlike critical race theorists.
Yes. And just a few more highlights from this. The distinguishing characteristic of humans is that we all created in the image and likeness of God. So once again, a little bit of fan service for all the Christians in the audience there.
Good point. Yeah, I forgot this was a religious organisation.
Yeah. And just to really put a pin on what this is all really about, at the heart of racism is the human tendency towards sin, our sheer human fallenness. It is an original sin, idolatry. So they're
racism's idolatry.
They're just saying the quiet part out loud there, that they are reframing racism as original sin.
Right. That is true. That is exactly right.
Straight out there. And then if we just move along, just to finish this off, once again, this has all been put together by the Salvation Army International Social Justice Commission.
And they're on Twitter. What a surprise. I wonder if that's informed any of this nonsense.
I mean, joined 2015, so times would it would add up there. But let's be honest, you're a charity. I mean, if you're going to talk about social justice, surely being a charitable cause and giving money to stuff could be considered a form of legitimate social justice to a certain extent. Not all of this nonsensical social justice where you just make a problem and then try and fix it by destroying society. I mean, why does a religious charity need this? And then if we move along, just as one last bit, they've got a page about it on their website, and this little video here just talks about seeking justice together. It ends with this rubbish call to arms: go and do something. That's it. Just go and do something.
Well, I would, but I can't tell who I'm supposed to be doing anything to, because it turns out all of the races are actually identical. So I can't identify the victims of racism, because there's literally no difference between anyone ever at all.
Oh, whoops.
So honestly, I'm actually thinking problem solved, to be honest.
Good job, Salvation Army.
Over.
You did it.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I no longer need to care about this issue at all. Thanks very much.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com and sign up to get access to all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, we've got absolutely loads of that because we've been doing this for over a year now, so we've got a massive library of content that we're really, really proud of. We've got loads of premium articles, which we have written by our in-house writers and external writers, such as this one by Hugo, which is talking about the great narrative of the World Economic Forum and how it's falling apart. The cracks are becoming visible. And we also have, for silver tier members and above, an audio track read by Jonathan Crow, who's a very, very good speaker, and this makes it easier for you. We also have our regular series, such as Contemplations, like this one, where I debate Josh about whether free will's an illusion or not. I am very firmly on the free will exists side of things, and Josh is wrong, but you can find out why if you go and sign up. We also have the epochs that Bo and I do, which is fantastic. At the moment, we're halfway through, or 2/3 of the way through the series on Belisarius. Do you know who Belisarius is, Callum?
Got to reconquered Rome.
Yes, he did. And
We lost it.
It's honestly a genuine tragedy, and it's a really sad tale. And we're just at the apex of his conquests at the moment. But next week, we'll get to enjoy the tragedy of it. It's really sad. But we also do loads of other stuff, like interviews that we did one recently with Philip Tanzer, who's a men's rights activist and conservative activist. And in this second one, we end up talking about the sort of metaphysics of masculinity. What is it you're trying to uphold by being a man? And I think it's important. Lots there to learn. And he's a very interesting thinker anyway. We also have the book club, which is fantastic. We're about to record another one now, but this last one we did was Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince. So if you want to get the most out of these books, you can join us there, because we've done a lot of work studying these. And we also do premium podcasts covering sensitive subjects, such as what happened to the January the 6th rioters. And we do slightly more academic ones, such as this next one about the origins of intersectionality. Where does the term come from? What's the point of it? Well, I went and read everything that Kimberly Crenshaw wrote about it, and, well, it's not good news, frankly.
In addition, you can also follow us on any of the social medias, such as Getter.com, so you can follow us there at lotuseaters_com, and also you'll be speaking at the Counter Conference conference.
Yes. The Counter Conference at the London O2 on December the 8th.
Yes.
I'm going to be speaking on a panel with Jason Miller, Lawrence Fox, and a few others. It's going to be fantastic, so come down and see us there.
Anyway, if you'd like to get access to all that premium content or follow everything we do, please sign up at lotuseaters.com. Thank you and goodbye.